Part 17. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 161. Chapter 161 Swipe my card. On the way back to his residence, Ren Zheng kept thinking, Ms. Su, although we had a near miss today, I must remind you. Your behavior today was very inappropriate. Do you know that you almost died? Because of your impulsiveness, all the company's efforts were in vain. Su Yun expected her to be verbose, but she didn't expect her to be so verbose. She smiled at her and said, "Is it so serious?" Seeing that she didn't realize the seriousness of the problem, Ren Zhen became even more serious. "Miss Su, I don't know why you are still smiling at this time. You think nothing is wrong, right? It's just a coincidence that you know Mr. Will's daughter, but what if you don't know her? Or Mr. Will's daughter didn't show up, or she didn't recognize you as her friend. When we are in other people's places, we should know how to do as we please. The organizer does have some shortcomings, but we can make suggestions to the other party afterwards instead of blaming others face to face. If the other party disqualifies us for this reason, the other party didn't really include us among the qualified candidates," Su Yun interrupted her and couldn't stand her chanting. "There are too many second stage hiccups." I was stunned, and Ren Zheng was stunned, not knowing what to say. "Assistant Ren, I know you are doing everything from the perspective of the company, and you do have good intentions, but can't you see? People from China and other small countries are not looked down upon at all. The other party was already very discriminatory, and now everyone knows that she is friends with Mr. Will's daughter. If she wins the award, she will definitely be considered the result of a relationship." Zhang Shiwei's words are an excellent example. Of course, she cannot represent everyone, but a considerable number of people will think so. No matter how much everyone talks about it, she can already foresee the consequences before she even participates in the competition. This, Ren Zheng didn't expect this level. From the moment Su Yun started to get into trouble with Mr. Weir, all she could think about was what she would do if she offended the master. Can Wulan be able to expand her business abroad in the future? Now that Su Yun mentioned it like this, it reminded her. "Then are we now, riding a tiger in a trap?" she said cautiously. "When you participate in the competition, you will face two outcomes. One is to fail and return home in despair, the other is to succeed and be regarded as the result of having a relationship, which will be disgraceful. If you don't participate in the competition, you will quit the competition with a guilty conscience, which is even worse." In short, Su Yun is wrong whether she does it or not. She nodded solemnly, not really worried, but it was better to let her assistant worry about this matter and try to think of a solution than to whisper in her ears. As expected, this move was very effective. After she finished analyzing it, Ren Zheng became entangled. After returning to the hotel, she went into her room to work, presumably to make a routine report and think of a solution. Su Yun was happy to be quiet. When she entered the house, she changed out of her formal dress and put on comfortable clothes before turning on her phone. There were several unread messages, one of which was a greeting emoji sent by Lisa. She smiled and casually sent an emoji back to her, then exited and returned to the main interface. In addition to the company group messages, they were sent by Zhao Xian and Arian. They are just concerned about whether she has arrived, why she doesn't reply to the message, etc. She reported everyone's safety and ignored the small incident of the reception banquet. She only said that she fell asleep due to jet lag. Finally, she flipped through it and confirmed that Yao had not sent her a message. She was still a little disappointed. "Busy person. Are you so busy that you don't even have time to send her a message?" His fingers pressed a few keys, wanting to send him a message, but after thinking about it, he deleted it. "If he doesn't send it, I won't send it." She shouldn't be so proactive. However, after turning over and thinking about it, I couldn't help but open the chat page. What age is this? Do women still have to be reserved? She took the initiative, she just missed him, how about it? Quickly type 3 words, I'm here, and then send it with one click, without giving yourself a chance to hesitate or regret. However, after these 3 words were sent out, it seemed like nothing happened. There was no response at all, not even a perfunctory expression, and my mood was instantly very low. Starting at those 3 words, I felt very embarrassed. She had taken the initiative, and his reaction was too bland. It was so shameless. Hold down the word and want to withdraw, but the time has expired and cannot be withdrawn. Damn it! She was depressed when her phone suddenly rang. Seeing Yao's name flashing on it, she was so excited that she pressed the answer button. But the moment he was about to make contact, he stopped the car abruptly. No, 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 no. Didn't picking up the call in such a hurry mean that she was waiting for his call? After a 3-second pause, she finally pressed the answer button, fearing that he would think she was not here and hang up again. Hello, the pronunciation was drawn out, sounding a bit lazy. 7 hours and 28 minutes, he said. What? Soo-yoon blinked, not understanding what he meant. You are 7 hours and 28 minutes late. Yao seemed to be checking the time. According to the flight time, you should have arrived 7 hours and 28 minutes ago. Even if you were given an hour and a half to travel and you are also 5 hours late for rest time. Soo-yoon, then you are still 7 hours and 28 minutes late. No. It is 7.5 hours. What's the point? He obviously knew her flight time and could have taken the initiative to call her and send her a message, but now he dared to blame her for being late. Sorry, I'm in a meeting. He pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. Having been in meetings all day long, with meetings here and there interspersed, he was really busy. He was so busy that he just drank a cup of coffee to refresh himself. Just when he was about to call her, her message came. Even though it was just 3 simple words, looking at it could warm his heart and relieve his fatigue. Okay, I forgive you. Since he said he was sorry, she happily forgave him. Are you still used to it there? I know there are a few French restaurants there that are pretty good. You can try them, he said. I'll send you the address later. What you think is good must not be cheap. She poked the bed with her fingers and curled her lips and said, forget it, you can just eat the fast food in the hotel. Swipe my card, he laughed when he heard complaints about the price. Okay, swipe your card. Where is your card? Bring it here. He deliberately stretched out his hand, as if he could put the card in her palm in the next second. Thousands of kilometers apart, it was easy to say, just swipe his card. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 162. Chapter 162. I am there for everything. In the middle of your suitcase, there is a black gold card without a password. You can use it to swipe it. What I didn't expect was that he actually said this. Soo-yoon was surprised. She quickly got out of bed and rummaged through her suitcase. Sure enough, she found a black gold card in the place he mentioned. It had a black background and a gold thread running across the middle. It looked like it was no ordinary card. When did you stuff it? She didn't know. It doesn't matter when you stuff it, as long as it's enough for you. After a pause, he said, it's not easy to go out. Eating well and sleeping well is the first priority. I'm not around, so remember to take care of yourself. Soo-yoon was very moved by these words, and her heart felt as if it had been properly ironed, and she felt comfortable. From childhood to adulthood, all she has received and learned is how to be self-reliant and how to take care of herself. However, now there is a person who is thinking about you, whether you eat well, whether you sleep well, and how you eat. In his eyes, sleeping and sleeping seemed to be a huge and remarkable event. I know, "So do you," she said softly, and her voice became much softer unconsciously. Si Yao's lips raised as he seemed to have remembered something. "By the way, I heard that the organizer invited Mr. Will to come this time. That person is a bit difficult to deal with. If you encounter him, remember to try to avoid a head-on conflict." Before she could reply happily, Si Yao Mei's heart skipped a beat and he asked tentatively, "You must have already met her, right?" She hummed softly, and simply told her everything that happened today. She finished speaking, and this time it was Si Yao's turn to remain silent. "Are you speechless to me?" She didn't think it was anything at first, but after being told the whole thing as a bystander, she was also speechless to herself. She had offended such a heavy weight right after she arrived. But she was speechless. Even if she had to do it again, she felt that she would still do it. She can tolerate other things, but the clear contempt for Chinese perfumers makes her feel unbearable. No, Si Yao stroked his forehead, and he understood her temperament, but what he didn't expect was that he met Will on the first day, and it was still the same situation. "Didn't you solve the problem?" "Wei, Mr. Er didn't get angry with you, nor did he kick you out." "Then I solved it. It was Lisa who solved it." She was very frank and self-aware. "If she hadn't happened to be Mr. Will's daughter, I might have been thrown out today," she said half-jokingly, knowing clearly that this was impossible. As a top international perfumer, his status and reputation are all there. Even if he is angry, he will not go too far in front of so many people. Besides, she was right. The organizer had indeed failed in his duties. He was angry because he felt that he had lost face. If he kicked her out because of this, it would be a loss of his own status. In the final analysis, it's because of yourself. If it weren't for the friends you made at the beginning, how could you have the rewards you have today? However, he was also very surprised by her social relationship. "I didn't expect that Mr. Will's my daughter is actually your friend. You know, how many people in the world want to have a relationship with him and want to take a shortcut, but there is no way, but she is actually friends with Mr. Will's daughter. I didn't expect Lisa to be his daughter. When I met Lisa, she was just an ordinary little girl. At that time, she didn't talk much and was introverted. Who would have thought that she would get involved with Mr. Will? What relationship?" She herself felt very surprised. She didn't have many friends, but she met one here, and she still had such an important status. So, this can be regarded as an unintentional intervention, and it can be regarded as your blessing. In any case, he felt relieved. At least with this relationship, Will should not be too difficult for her. What a blessing. It's true that I'm in a dilemma now. Whether I win or not win this tasting competition, it's not a good thing for me, she wailed, lying on her back on the bed, watching. He murmured to the ceiling. "Are you scared?" The chair turned. Si Yao faced a whole side of floor-to-ceiling glass, and outside was the boundless night view of the city. It was almost late at night, but he had no intention of going home. When he thought of going back, it would be empty. Without her presence, I felt it was much better to stay in this office and face a desk full of work. "What are you afraid of? I've been in the worst situations. I can't care less about other people's opinions. I just do what I should do." Even though she was complaining on her lips, she had already made up her mind. The current situation is like this. She has never been one to shrink back when encountering difficulties. Did she withdraw from the competition because she was afraid of other people's criticism, or did she lose the competition on purpose? Do what you should do, learn to make perfume, and join this industry because you like it, not because of what others think. If you cared about this, you would have been mad to death when Luo Yuanhang and Zhang Shiwei teamed up to hack her. Her words made Si Yao laugh. "Let go and do what you want. I will do everything." This understatement can be said to be the greatest encouragement and support. Su Yun felt extremely relieved. No matter what, there is always someone supporting you. She is not working alone or fighting alone. There was a knock on the door, and Soo-yoon thought it was from her side at first. She answered and got up to open the door. When she opened the door, she saw that the door was empty, but she still heard the knock, and realized that it was from his side. It seems like someone is looking for you, so I'll hang up now and talk to you later. Before Seo could say anything, the phone was hung up. Wicked his eyebrows, he looked up at the door that was being knocked persistently. Come in. Mr. Si, Miss Sue. Su Feng looked a little embarrassed. He was a difficult character. I told you that fourth brother must be here. You have to stop me. Su Feng, you are really becoming less and less understanding of the world. Tell me how you ended up being a secretary. While scolding, the person had already stepped in. Office. Ms. Su. Si Yao sat up straight and waved his hand, and then Su Feng calmed down and exited the door. The woman who came in was wearing Chanel's latest slim-fitting trench coat this fall. After she took it off after entering, she wore a tight-fitting little black skirt underneath, which seemed to have been cut to fit her figure, perfectly outlining the uneven lines. She took a few steps forward with a smile on her face, but seemed to think of something again. She glanced back and said dissatisfied, Su Feng is really getting more and more blind. He doesn't even know how to close the door. As he said that, he was about to close the door. Before his hand touched the door panel, he heard Si Yao say, no need to close it. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 163. Chapter 163. It's actually love without knowing it. Humbling her fingers, she stopped and turned to smile at him. Okay, then I'll listen to you, it doesn't matter. Going back to the desk, she untied the bag she had put down. Inside was a large insulated lunchbox. I know you are a person who doesn't care about anything when you work, and you haven't eaten, right? He glanced at the coffee in front of him, then took the coffee cup away and poured it away. It's bad for your stomach if you don't eat well and drink coffee all the time. You just don't know how to take care of yourself. As he spoke, he opened the lunchbox, which contained hot food. Not only did the color look beautiful, but the smell was also very tempting. I specially made your favorite sweet and sour pork ribs and colorful fried shredded chicken. Try it. Full of enthusiasm, she placed the chopsticks and spoons in front of him, holding her chin with her hands. Looking at him with longing. Si Yao glanced at it and said calmly, did you do it? Yes, come and try my handiwork. She narrowed her eyes with laughter and urged him to eat. You did it, he repeated it again, but not in a questioning tone. His eyes looked at her, cold and penetrating, as if he could see through all her little thoughts and ideas at a glance. Pouting, Su Jianran stood up straight and stamped his feet. Okay, I admit that I packed it from Yongxiang Tower. I just got off the plane not long ago, the jet lag hasn't gotten over yet, and everyone is exhausted. Even if I'm happy to go to the kitchen, but it's too late to buy groceries. I didn't say you had to do it. He closed the lid of the lunchbox and put his hand aside. Since you are very tired, you should go home and have a good rest. You shouldn't run to me. Then they want to see you. Seeing him put the lunchbox aside without eating a bite, Su Jianran got angry. Even if I didn't make it myself, I went to buy it myself. Just take a bite of it as a favor. Don't you like their food the most? I'm not hungry, he said calmly, it's getting late. I'll ask Su Feng to take you back. I don't want to go back, she frowned and said unhappily, if you don't like takeout, then let's go out to eat and I'll accompany you. With that said, he stepped forward and pulled his wrist. It's a good time to go out for a late night snack. Fourth brother, let's go, let's go. She acted coquettishly, and after getting off the plane, she hurriedly bought midnight snacks and sent them over, just to see him early. How could she leave right after arriving? She didn't want to go back, she wanted to stay with him for a while longer. You ran, don't make trouble, Sci-Yao took out his hand with force, it's very late. You must be very tired since you just got off the plane. Go back and rest. I don't. Seeing that he refused, Su Jianran's temper finally burst out. You also know that not long after I got off the plane, you saw that I was not happy or unhappy at all. We haven't seen each other for half a year. I went all the way to buy you a late night snack when I came back. It's okay if you don't appreciate it, so why are you chasing me away? It's not good for you to be a girl out so late at night, he frowned. Don't run towards me at this late hour in the future. It will have a bad influence. What's wrong? I like you, and the whole world knows it. I just want to come and see you, she shouted loudly. If everyone in the company hadn't gotten off work at this point, people outside would definitely be able to listen. Get her confession. Sci-Yao raised his eyes and looked at her, but I don't like you. Su Jianran, I told you that I treat you as my sister. If you don't want to, don't call me fourth brother again in the future. The Su family and the Si family are family friends. The two previous generations of the two families have a very good relationship. It is said that the old man of the Si family received some favors from the Su family at first. Because of this, the two families are relatively close and have the idea of marriage. Su Jianran's uncle married Sci-Yao's aunt, so to a certain extent, they were still related. Su Jianran never concealed her love for Sci-Yao. No matter how many times Sci-Yao rejected her, she was not discouraged. In her opinion, although he rejected her, there was no other woman around him, so maybe he also liked her. Yes, just because the relationship between the two families is too close, he thinks that he treats her as a sister, but in fact he loves her without knowing it. It was this understanding that kept her persevering. She believed that one day she would be able to influence and move him, and sooner or later he would still be hers. Seeing his face sinking, Su Jianran was still a little scared. She bit her lower lip and tugged on his sleeves. Okay, I haven't seen you for too long and miss you. Can't you be so fierce? I went all the way to buy you a late night snack, but you didn't appreciate it and still scolded me. He pursed his lips, tears already welling up in his eyes, looking ready to fall at any moment. Sci-Yao glanced at her and sighed, you are not young anymore. You shouldn't be so willful. You haven't been back for more than half a year. Your parents and brother must miss you very much. You should go home early. They don't miss me. They only care about business. Even you are like this now. You all only care about business and don't care about me, she said, taking the lunch box again. You can eat it first if you want me to go back, eat it and I'll leave. Hands were placed in front of him, as if he would not stop until he finished eating. You ran, don't be willful. He knew her intentions, so he couldn't give her a little hope. Hope without results is the most hurtful, so it would be better not to give it in the first place. Standed up, took his coat and said, Su Feng. Mr. Si Su Feng, who had been waiting outside, heard the voice and came in immediately. Send Miss Su back, he said. Su Jianran didn't expect that he wouldn't agree to such a small wish. Was the rice she bought poisoned or something? Will he die if he eats it? Sci-Yao, I hate you. Okay, if you don't eat, I'll throw it in the trash can and feed it to the dog, and you won't even want to eat it. She hugged the lunchbox and rushed out angrily. Su Feng glanced outside the door. She rushed out so fast that he didn't even react. But what was she going to do now? Sci-Yao raised his chin and said, go and have a look, and then send her home. The little girl is willful, but she has a family connection. If something happens this night, he has an unshirkable responsibility. Then you. Su Feng hesitated. I'll drive back in another car myself, he said. After seeing her off, you can go back and rest. Yes, Su Feng responded and quickly chased after him. There was still a faint aroma of food in the air. He touched his stomach and felt a little hungry. Getting the car keys and going out, she looked at the time and thought about how she, who was in France, would have to eat at this time. Simply go for a late-night snack, as if you were eating with her half a world away. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 164. Chapter 164, Poisoning Late at Night. His guess was absolutely correct. At this point, Su Yun was indeed ready to have dinner. Originally she just wanted to pass it by casually, but Si Yao's recommendation aroused her interest. For her, the joy of life is not only to mix incense, but also to eat, and the food should not be let down. Su Yun originally wanted to bring her little assistant with her, but she had already arrived at her door. Considering her character of talking casually, and if she still couldn't stop talking after a meal, she might as well forget it, and come back and give it to her in the worst case. Pack some. A man strolled out and hailed a taxi, casually giving the location of one of the restaurants he had sent. She can speak French. Even if she is alone here, it is not that difficult to communicate, but not many people know it. Perhaps even Luo Yuanhang may not know that she knows French, Japanese, and German. In terms of learning, she has a high level of understanding. These are all due to her interests, so she just learns. It is not that troublesome to look at some foreign fragrance information or spice history. She needs to use it, so she goes after learning it. I didn't think it was something worth showing off, and I never mentioned it. Going to a restaurant alone, ordering and eating alone, it feels like traveling alone, very comfortable but also very lonely. While sipping the fragrant red wine, she missed Cheese Yale even more. Hi, Su. A familiar way of addressing her, and then a cheerful figure flashed in front of her. What a coincidence. Let me just say we are destined. Are you coming here to eat too? Su Yun didn't expect that not long after they separated, she would meet Lisa again. What a coincidence. Yeah, I heard it's good here from a friend's recommendation, so I came over and gave it a try, she nodded. Of course it's great here. Lisa was still a little proud when she said this. Have you tried it? How does it taste? It's good. She ordered the signature dish here, and it tasted really good. But for her, she still prefers to eat domestic cuisine. Lisa was very happy to see her. She stood beside her and kept talking softly. I said I wouldn't see you until tomorrow, but I didn't expect to see you again now. By the way, are you alone? Aren't you here on behalf of the company? Don't you have an assistant or someone to take care of you? Su Yun raised her eyebrows when she thought of the assistant she left behind in the hotel. She is resting in the hotel. She was probably still worried about tomorrow's competition. Then you, the assistant, are so unprofessional. As an assistant, you should take care of your food, clothing, housing, and transportation. How can you rest by yourself and let you go out to eat alone? Lisa said with disapproval. I asked her to rest. She circled her ears with her fingers and said frankly, I want to be alone, for a while. Smiled at her, Lisa understood and smiled too. But she stopped laughing soon. Then did I bother you? It's okay, we haven't seen each other for a long time. I'm very happy to see you, Su Yun said with a smile. Are you alone too? As if she had just come back to her senses, Lisa exclaimed, oops. I forgot that I had an appointment with someone. Then he took a look inside and said, I'll go over first and wait until I have time. Let's have a good gathering when we have time. Okay, she was happy. Lisa passed her and continued to walk forward. Su Yun subconsciously glanced back and saw her walking straight to the opposite side of a woman and then sitting down. There was a boy about 5 or 6 years old sitting on the other side of the woman. He was eating with a knife and fork. He looked like a little gentleman and he was quite cute. Probably sensing that someone was looking at him, the little boy looked up at Suyun, and then smiled at her. He looked a little shy, but also very well behaved. Suyun liked it immediately. Children are also very cute. Seeing him, she suddenly remembered what Xiao said before. When she brought the pair of wooden figures back, he thought she wanted to have children and said that a son and a daughter would be great. At that time, she blamed him for talking nonsense, but now that she thinks about it carefully, her and Xiao's children it will be very cute too. Unconsciously, she raised the corners of her lips, turned around and took a photo of the food with her phone, then sent it to Xiao with the following 4 words, poison late at night. Calculating the time difference, it must be very late over there, and maybe everyone has fallen asleep. I don't necessarily want him to reply, I just miss him and send a message, as if this can comfort me. Unexpectedly, it didn't take long for him to reply, and he also sent her a photo, which showed a portion of stir-fried beef and a bowl of yam and pork rib soup. He imitated her and replied with 2 words, rebound. Suyun. That's too much. He will bounce back. The more the CEO learns, the more down-to-earth he becomes, and the more he learns, the worse he becomes. The most outrageous thing is that he only put in the delicious food that she likes to eat. The cream of mushroom soup in front of her suddenly lost its flavor. Put your mouth down, just hold your phone with both hands and send him a message, eating alone in the middle of the night will make you fat. I already have a wife, do I still care about being fat? He replied very disapprovingly. Ha! You are so patient. Suyun replied quickly, I will return it if I gain weight. Once the goods are shipped, they will not be returned or exchanged. Ha! This is a naked provocation. Is he feeling confident? Suyun thought for a while, and was about to give him another reply when she suddenly heard a heavy bang, followed by screams, cups and plates falling, chairs and tables being pushed away, and even someone stood up. Stunned for a moment, she turned around in shock and saw someone lying on the ground behind her. The people standing beside her looked at a loss. The woman half kneeling on the ground was crying and screaming, her voice was too loud. It's cluttered and you can't hear what's being said. She saw Lisa at a glance. Immediately stood up and walked over quickly, and saw Lisa standing there scared and anxious, her eyes were already red. What should I do? How could this happen? Lisa, after calling her, Suyun looked down and found that the boy lying on the ground twitching was the boy who just smiled at her. He curled up into a ball, his face was pale, his breathing was very rapid, and his eyes were rolling. It looks very dangerous. The waiters in the restaurant were also frightened and gathered in a circle, but no one dared to do anything. Those who could remain calm had already called an ambulance. Nanan Lisa was about to cry. The woman who was half kneeling next to the little boy was already crying. She was crying and shouting, and she looked like a mother. Let me take a look. Without any time to think, she knelt down to check. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 165. Chapter 165. It's useless for you to believe her. Suyun knelt down to check and saw that the child's face and neck were covered in sweat. When he reached out and touched it, there was sweat on his back. He was covered in sweat, and his hands and feet were still twitching and trembling. Not only that, there were also dots of blood on his face. A red dot appears. It must be an allergy, she said, and started to unbutton the child's collar. What are you doing? Who are you? Don't touch my child, the woman on the side screamed in French, pulling her arm hard and refusing to let her touch it. This is an allergy symptom. If it is not treated as soon as possible, it may be very dangerous. Suyun didn't even bother to get angry with her, and turned to Lisa, who was still in a daze. Hearing her words, Lisa finally came to her senses and bent down to stop the woman. Helen, she is my friend, she is helping to save Nanan, don't worry. Maybe she was too anxious, or maybe Lisa's words had some effect. Although Helen was still crying loudly, she no longer tried to stop her. Soo-yoon quickly unbuttoned the child's collar and unfolded the clothes. As expected, there was a red rash on the exposed chest. It was really an allergy. Looking up at the woman, she asked, "What did he eat?" His tone was very serious, and his eyes were particularly sharp. He calmed the crying woman for a moment, and said in a daze, he only ate some bread and drank orange juice. What's wrong? Is there something wrong with the food? Then he looked at the waiters in the crowd and said, there is something wrong with the food in your restaurant. If there is anything wrong with my child, I will definitely not let you go. This sentence made the other guests panic. Soo-yoon didn't bother to explain, so she could only say loudly, you all spread out, he can't breathe if you are all gathered around here. Also, go get a large glass of water, come here, hurry up. It was a mess. Some waiters went to get water and some were busy appeasing the guests. In short, the whole restaurant was in a mess. Lisa was actually not sure whether Soo-yoon could do it, but looking at her calm look, she could only believe her at the moment. Soo-yoon turned around and looked around, trying to find something that could induce vomiting, but it was hard to find any chopsticks in the Western restaurant, and the knife and fork felt too unsafe. Without thinking, she rinsed her hands with water and stuffed them directly into the child's mouth, pressing the base of his tongue. What are you doing? Helen, who could have waited quietly for a while, saw her move and immediately screamed, are you crazy? Take your dirty hands away from my son's mouth. The next second, the child made a disgusting sound of retching. Then, Soo-yoon quickly pulled out her hand, and the child spat out with a wow sound. The food residues on the ground gave off a disgusting sour smell, and the crowd nearby dispersed in a hurry. Helen was stunned for a moment, and almost couldn't hold back the words. She covered her mouth and turned her face to the side. Water, Soo-yoon said, ignoring the dirt on her hands. Lisa quickly handed over the water and saw her feeding the child little by little to his lips. After the sequence, although the child has not yet woken up, he already looks better, at least not as violent as the convulsions just now. It was only at this moment that Soo-yoon breathed a sigh of relief and turned to look at the woman who was covering her mouth and nose. The child has allergies. He should always have anti-allergy medicine. Where is the medicine? Opening her eyes, Helen looked at her in disbelief. I don't know, is he allergic? Soo-yoon. Is she really the child's mother? Would you know if your child has allergies? Looking at Lisa with doubtful eyes, she just smiled helplessly. The ambulance just happened to have arrived, and the medical staff rushed over quickly. After doing a simple examination, they put him in the ambulance. Soo-yoon breathed a sigh of relief. It would be much better if the hospital would handle the next steps. She wiped her hands and prepared to check out and leave. Unexpectedly, Helen grabbed her clothes and said, you can't leave. You have to go to the hospital with me. Helen, Lisa exclaimed her name, you can't do this, Sue is my friend. I'm sorry Lisa, Helen looked at her and said, even if she is your friend, I have to let her go to the hospital with me. It's not yet sure whether Nanan will be fine. What she did to Nanan just now, who knows if it will harm him instead. No, I believe Sue, Lisa assured her, still trusting her friend. Helen smiled bitterly, it's useless for you to believe her. You know, if something happens to Nan, I can't explain it to Lin. I originally brought Nan out secretly today. If something like this happens, Helen, I can understand your difficulties, but she won't. I'll go with her, Soo-yoon said lightly. She also understood clearly from the dispute between the two people. To put it bluntly, it was just because they didn't trust her, for fear that her actions just now would harm the child. Honestly speaking, she had no choice but to do so. Severe food allergies can cause people to go into shock, especially if they are still children. If it is more severe and no first aid measures are taken in time, it is very likely to be fatal. She couldn't just watch the child suffocate to death, she had to do something. Sue, Lisa looked at her apologetically. Both sides are her friends, and it was really rude and disrespectful for Helen to do this. It's okay, I can understand the concerns of a mother. She smiled slightly to express her understanding. However, although she could understand a mother's concerns and worries, she really couldn't understand how a mother could be so ignorant about her child. It was just a matter of trivial matters. How could such a major matter that could be life-threatening be done? Don't know anything about it? At Helen's insistence, Soo-yoon went to the hospital with her, and Lisa was worried, so naturally she followed along. The child was sent in for rescue, and the three people were waiting outside. Helen was so anxious that she kept wandering around. Even if Lisa comforted her, it was useless. Looking at her anxious look, Soo-yoon felt that she might be overthinking it. How could a mother not care about her child? Maybe she really just wasn't thoughtful? Or maybe the child happens to have his first food allergy attack and happens to encounter it. I was thinking wildly, and I felt that it was really difficult to raise a child. I originally thought that it would be nice to have a child of my own, but now the idea that had arisen disappeared quietly. Suddenly there were rapid footsteps in the corridor, and the sound of leather shoes on the floor tiles was very loud. Before she could turn her head to look at the source of the sound, she saw Helen stopped walking around with a horrified expression. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 166. Chapter 166. Poor people must be hateful. That kind of panic was completely different from when she screamed and tried to throw herself away fiercely. It was like two people. That beautiful face was full of panic and nervousness. Soo-yoon turned her head curiously and saw several men walking towards her. The leader of them was wearing rimless glasses and a well-tailored suit, and it was also a high-end suit. The one behind him was obviously an assistant. And the bodyguards came with him. The man's face is very calm, and he even looks a little elegant, and judging from his appearance, he seems to be of Asian descent. Lin, you're here. Listen to my explanation. Although Helen was still frightened, she still rushed forward, crying with tears in her eyes. However, before she could jump on the man, she was stopped by the bodyguard next to him. The man glanced at her coldly. Where is Nanan? Nan is still in there. I don't know how it ended up like this. We were all having a good time today, and he was also very happy. I don't know how he could, I don't know, I really don't know, woo. Her speech was a bit incoherent and she kept crying. Soo-yoon raised her eyebrows and was a little speechless. They are, husband and wife? But there are no couples who get along like this. It looks really strange. Turned to look at Lisa aside, but she looked unfazed and didn't say anything. Helen, I warned you not to meet Nanan alone. Did you turn a deaf ear to my words? The man said coldly. If there is anything wrong with the child, you don't want to live. His voice was calm, but every word was stern. After listening to what he said, Soo-yoon felt a chill in her heart. And when she looked at Helen, she was shaking like chaff and almost paralyzed. No, you can't do this to me, she burst into tears. I am his mother, you can't do this to me. Looking at the woman lying limply on the ground in front of him, the man raised his thin lips sarcastically. Are you worthy of it? Soo-yoon. Ah, what a cold-blooded man this is. Helen, who was paralyzed on the ground, cried for a while, and seemed to suddenly remember something. She turned her head to look in the direction of Suyun, stretched out her finger with purple nail polish and pointed at her. "No, it's not me, it's her. Suyun. She did a lot of strange things to Nan Nan just now. If anything happens to Nan Nan, she will definitely be involved. It's her." Well, she took back the little bit of sympathy she had just overflowed with. This is a woman who deserves it. Sure enough, there must be something hateful about poor people, and it was simply incomprehensible that she was on the sidelines. Not to mention that the child is not well yet and the results have not yet come out. Even if it is unlucky, if there is any eventuality, it will be due to severe food allergies, not her series of operations, which can all be relied on. On her head? This Miss Helen's full name is probably Lai Helen. The man's eyes were looking at her deeply. Suyun looked at him without any dodge in her eyes. She had a clear conscience, so there was no need to be afraid. "Lin Shanjun, this is not surprising, she is saving Nanan, I can testify." It seemed that Lisa also knew this man. She took the initiative to speak for Suyun. In fact, she did not expect Helen to do this. "Lisa," the man nodded at her, seemingly well-mannered, "your friend?" "Yes, my friend. Su is saving Nanan and not harming him. I can guarantee this." Helen on the side was still saying, "Lisa, is she a doctor? How can you ensure that she didn't hurt Nan Nan? Maybe Nan Nan was fine originally, but being messed up by her like this made it worse. She made her dirty. His hand was stuffed into my son's mouth." Hearing this, Lin Shanjian's eyes flashed behind his lenses. "What have you done to him?" She put her hand into Nanan's mouth and unbuttoned his clothes. "Lin, it's not me, it's really not me. How could I harm my son?" Helen struggled and said. "If you objected at the time, why didn't you say anything? Su was obviously trying to save Nanan, and you knew why you slandered her like this." Even Lisa, a mutual friend, couldn't hold her breath at this moment. I was really angry. Fortunately, she regarded Helen as a friend and felt pity for her. I didn't expect that she would confuse right and wrong like this. It was obvious that Suyun was rescuing people. There were so many people at that time who had no idea and were frightened. She was the only one who decisively rescued people. No matter what the result was, her motive was definitely correct, but Helen insisted that he was harming people. Child. How can a human be like this? I was too anxious, Helen muttered, and her voice became obviously much softer. Lin Shanjun ignored her at all and kept looking at Suyun. "Tell me, what did you do to my son?" There was no emotion or anger on his face, and it was impossible to tell his mood at the moment from his face. This man was very deep-seated, and his thoughts were hidden deep in his heart. I saw the child's condition and judged that he had a food allergy, but because the situation was urgent, I could not determine the allergen. Before the ambulance arrived, some first aid measures had to be taken to prevent the situation from getting worse. So I just made him vomit. Spit out what he had eaten to reduce the absorption of allergens, and then gave him some water. The reason why he unbuttoned his clothes was because severe allergies can cause difficulty in breathing, which will make him more comfortable. She was very frank about her motives for doing these things. That's the way it is. As for whether you believe it or not, it's up to Mr. Lin. After she finished speaking, Lin Shanjun did not answer immediately. His eyes were as deep as the sea. Although he said nothing, the suffocating and depressing atmosphere was even more uncomfortable, and the air seemed to be frozen. This man is quite like Sci-fi in some aspects. He has an aura of calmness and authority. Even if he doesn't speak, just looking at you quietly like this will make you sit upright unconsciously. Such a man, born to be a leader. It's no wonder Helen was afraid of being like that, but no matter what the reason was, it was not the reason for her to regard herself as a scapegoat. After a moment, Lin Shanjun said, "Thank you." Lisa breathed a sigh of relief, while Su-yoon remained calm and said, "You're welcome." Helen was the only one on the side who was stunned for 2 seconds and was hysterical. "Lin, why don't you believe me? You would rather believe the words of a person you just met than believe me." "I am Nanan's mommy." I said. "You don't deserve it," he said calmly. At this time, the door of the emergency room opened, and a doctor walked out, who are the family members of the child. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 167. Chapter 167. It's not about money at all. Lin Shanjun stepped forward and said, "I am the child's father. The child has severe allergies. You should pay more attention to your diet and avoid contact with allergens. You must pay special attention to food." The doctor gave a rough explanation. Basically, the child is fine now, but if you take good care of it, it may cause serious problems. In fact, it was pretty much what Su-yoon guessed. She was not a doctor, she had just seen how people with allergies like this were dealt with. The child moved to the ward to rest. After making sure that nothing happened, Su-yoon stood up and left. "Since nothing happens, I'll leave first." "Wait a minute." Lin Shanjun stopped her and walked up to her. "What reward do you want for saving my son?" Su-yoon: "No, it's just a little effort. I actually didn't do anything. If you want to thank me, you should thank the doctor." She pointed in the direction of the doctor, not intending to ask for any reward. "Are you sure you really don't want it?" He seemed surprised and emphasized, "Whether it's money or things, as long as you want my help, you might as well say it boldly." Lin Shanjun is still very powerful in the Chinese circle in Paris. Lisa tugged on Su-yoon's sleeve and whispered, "If you need help with anything, just ask him." In fact, Lisa didn't need to tell her, Su-yoon could probably guess it. This Lin Shanjun has a different temperament. In addition, when he asked her what compensation she wanted, it was written all over his face, "I have money and I have power. You just ask, there is nothing I can't do." However, she really had nothing to say to him. But looking at his confident look, Su-yoon suddenly thought of making things difficult. If Mr. Lin insists on talking about remuneration, I'm actually not short of money, and I don't have much interest in other things. I wonder if Mr. Lin has ever heard of a perfume called Flower Period. She curled her lips with a sly smile. I quite like that one. If Mr. Lin really wants to thank me, just a bottle of perfume. Is it the flowering period? Lin Shanjun repeated, probably because he was afraid that he heard wrongly. Yes, she nodded and said, "Okay, it's getting late. I have something to do tomorrow, so I'll leave first." She nodded slightly as a greeting. She was about to leave, but Lisa also chased after her. "Su, wait for me. I'm leaving too. There was no point in staying here." She followed Su-yoon into the elevator, still feeling very uncomfortable. "I really didn't expect Helen to be like this. I used to think that she was doing it all for her son, and she was quite unfortunate, but now it seems that Lin Shanjun doesn't want her for a reason." "They are divorced." He raised his eyebrows. Although he didn't ask about other people's family affairs, he could roughly tell something from what the two of them said. "We have been divorced for several years. To be precise, we broke up. Lin Shanjun has never married her. But Helen never gave up and always thought that we could get back together. Originally I wanted to help her, but now I feel that after we break up, that's fine." She looked really angry. Su-yoon declined to comment. The two people were only acquainted once, so she couldn't comment on them. Anyway, it was between husband and wife. "By the way, Su, I haven't heard of the perfume you just mentioned. Is it new?" Even though Mr. Will is a top perfumer and a master in the perfume industry, his daughter is not familiar with these. Not familiar with it, nor engaged in this industry. In her words, She has no talent for this and is not very interested. Soo-yoon smiled and said, "It's not a new product, it's an old model, so old that it's out of print and discontinued." Huh, Lisa was surprised, "Isn't that hard to find?" "It's not hard to find, but it's just." She smiled meaningfully. "That perfume was developed and launched more than 100 years ago. It was the first independently developed perfume by our people. Not only did the perfume itself have special meaning, but the bottle that contained the perfume was also particularly exquisite and beautiful. Perfume is out of print, and only 2 small bottles are in the collection of museums in country are now they have a price but no market. It is not a matter of money at all. It's true that she's interested, and it's true that she wants it, but she also knows very well that it's impossible for Lin Shanjun to get it. The reason why she made this request is purely because he thinks that if he has money, he can do anything. His arrogance needs to be dampened a little, and he has never thought about really getting the flowering period." Listening to Soo-yoon's true intention, Lisa couldn't help but exclaimed, "Soo, you are more and more surprising to me. Do you know Lin Shanjian's status in the Chinese community, and even in Paris, no one dares to play with him like this, This can't be considered a joke. He wanted the reward himself, and he asked me to put forward conditions casually. I mentioned it, and it's up to him whether he can do it or not. I didn't force him to get it." Shrugged. She didn't feel like she was playing tricks on others. Okay, it was a bit of teasing, but she didn't force it. Lisa shook her head, "You didn't force it, but who is Lin Shanjun? Since he promised you, he will definitely get it. Otherwise, where will he put his face? If the news spreads, won't it make people laugh?" Soo-yoon hesitated, "Is it that serious?" "Yes. For men, especially men like Lin Shanjun, their face is as high as heaven." Well, that's because I didn't think well. Next time I see him, I'll tell him that I changed my mind and don't want him anymore. It can only be done next time. She can't let her go back and tell him now, "Hey, I just kidding, I don't want that perfume anymore, you'd better give me 1.8 million yuan. Lisa was dumbfounded and patted her shoulder, "Sue, why didn't I realize that you have such a sense of humor before? Maybe I hid it deeply, and now you dug it out." Soo-yoon joked with her. When she got out of the elevator, her cell phone rang. She could feel the vibration through her bag. She took it out and took a look. It was Ren Zheng, and her scalp felt numb. Sure enough, when she picked up the phone, she heard Ren Zheng's anxious voice, "Miss Su, where have you been so late? I've been waiting for you for a long time. You didn't even reply to my messages and calls. Do you know that this will make me worried?" "Yes. Why don't you tell me where you are now?" "I'm outside and will go back soon." She looked at the time and saw that it was indeed very late. "Okay, then come back quickly. It's not safe to go out at night. I'll wait for you at the hotel." Ren Zheng was relieved to have found her, but he still insisted on waiting for her. He had to discuss the matter of the tasting competition tomorrow. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 168. Chapter 168. Let them go to together. Back at the hotel, Ren Zheng was waiting for her, with all the pen and paper in hand, as if he was going to have a small meeting. Since she went out to eat alone and had no chance to bring her anything back, Soo-yoon felt that she was in the wrong, so she honestly opened the door and let her in. "Assistant Ren, have you eaten? I'll give you something to eat." Eating is the best way to relax the atmosphere, but Ren Zheng pushed up his glasses and said, "No, I've already eaten. Let's talk about tomorrow's tasting competition." Soo-yoon poured herself a glass of water and took a few sips. "Well, tell me what you think." This little assistant always has her own ideas, not to mention that since she came back, she has locked herself away for a long time and has been looking for her anxiously. She must have an idea. I discussed it with the company and we agreed that you should participate in tomorrow's tasting competition. She raised her head and said seriously, while preparing herself to persuade her. Soo-yoon nodded, yes, yes. Ren Zheng looked at her in surprise, as if he heard something incredible, and said, you agree? I agree, why don't you agree? She said. Then, are you sure? He asked cautiously and tentatively. If I wasn't sure, I wouldn't come here on behalf of the company. What's more, I also want to test my level among my peers. She held the cup and said frankly. Ren Zheng held her forehead. The company sent her here to win glory. She came to take the exam, and her attitude seemed to not care about the results. However, since you are participating on behalf of your company, you should work hard to win the award. Of course it would be best to win first place, but she didn't dare to say it, and she didn't think it was possible. I will work hard, she agreed, but I can't decide the outcome. After trying your best, you ran out at night and ran for so long. Ren Zheng cursed, but he didn't say it out loud. Well, that's it. Because of your relationship with Mr. Will, no matter what you do in this competition, regardless of the outcome, people will inevitably be criticized. The company has prepared a press release. As for public opinion, you don't need to worry. Actually, no need. Soo-yoon shook her head. The more you describe it, the darker it gets. Not to mention that if the company can influence domestic public opinion, can it also influence foreign ones? Rather than wasting that time and money, it is better to invest in experimental projects. Ren Zheng didn't know what to say. The company was thinking about her, but she didn't appreciate it. Okay, she closed the book. Since that's the case, I hope Miss Soo can perform well in tomorrow's competition. Let's go to bed early now. Soo-yoon breathed a sigh of relief, but Ren Zheng walked to the door and turned around. By the way, although this place is very prosperous, the public security abroad is not that good. It is best not to go out alone. If you need to travel, please ask me to accompany you. This is also my job scope. Okay. Soo-yoon raised her eyebrows and responded. In fact, this serious little assistant, apart from being a bit too verbose, is still a nice person, and he always thinks about her. Late at night, in the hotel room, Zhang Shiwei had just hung up the phone when a knock on the door rang. Frowning, he stood up and went to open the door. When the door opened, Rosen was leaning against the door with a wine bottle in one hand, looking at her with a malicious smile on his lips. Why are you here? Zhang Shiwei was a little impatient and had no intention of opening the door. It's very late. I've already taken a rest. What are you pretending to be? With a strong hand, he pushed the door open. She was no match for his strength, so she could only take 2 steps back, watched him enter the house drunkenly, and then turned around and closed the door. Rosen, don't forget what we are here for. Look at what you look like now. She deliberately distanced herself, looked at him and said coldly. What do you think we are here for? Rosen sneered. You want to come, I brought you here, but you haven't done what I want. Tell me, should you compensate me with some interest first? As he spoke, he opened his hand and rushed towards her. Zhang Shiwei wrapped her clothes tightly around her waist and ducked under his attack, making him miss her. What are you in a hurry for? Why do you think I'm in a hurry after it's been delayed for so long? You said it's easy to do something in France, but now that she's hooked up with Mr. Will, it's even more difficult. As the saying goes, God's calculations are better than those of man. I originally thought that it would be easier to attack on his territory, but it turned out to be more troublesome. Mr. Will, Zhang Shiwei chuckled, don't get me wrong, she just knows Mr. Will's daughter and has no relationship with Mr. Will. What difference does that make? Who doesn't know that Mr. Will loves his baby daughter the most? Rosen's state was obviously not right. His face was flushed and he was particularly excited. He smelled of alcohol, but it was not particularly heavy. Zhang Shiwei looked at his dazed eyes and immediately realized that he must have eaten again. That thing came later. How annoying. Rosen, you need to rest now. We will talk about these things after you have rested. Originally, she had something serious to say to him, but now that he was acting like this, his mind was not clear-headed, so she just went to open the door and said, "Go back to your room and rest first, and we'll talk about it tomorrow." After glancing at her, Rosen suddenly rushed toward the door. This time, she didn't escape and was pressed heavily against the door panel by him. "I won't leave," he gasped. "You can't leave Suyun to me, so you have to compensate me with yourself." As he spoke, he had already lifted her legs and put them on his waist with one hand, and used his fingers to unbutton her clothes nimbly. "Rosen, no," she refused, pushing hard with both hands, "let me go." However, her resistance was completely in vain for a person whose mind was not clear at all and whose strength was endless. I don't know if the dose of medicine this time was heavier, or if Rosen was already holding his breath. This time he was particularly crazy, more so than ever before, and he was almost tormented until dawn. When Zhang Shiwei opened his eyes again, he felt a terrible pain all over his body. He turned to look at the sleeping man beside him, wishing he could stab him with a knife. Taking a deep breath, she suppressed her impulse. This man is still useful, and she will use him to destroy Suyun, so she can only endure what she has suffered for the time being. I got up and went to take a shower, but I couldn't wash away the traces on my body. Wiping off the water mist on the mirror and looking at the bruises on her body, she wanted to use this body in exchange for what she wanted, but she was afraid it wouldn't work. So, in addition to destroying Suyun, she also wanted to get rid of the people on the bed outside. Man, let them go to together. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 169. Chapter 169. Are you checking me? By the time she walked out of the bathroom, she had already put on a smile. Rosen also woke up, turned over and looked at her. His eyes were clear, completely different from last night. "Are you awake?" She smiled charmingly, then wrapped herself in a bath towel and sat on the sofa next to the bed. "Then can we talk about business?" "What's the business?" Turning around to face her, Rosen put his head on one hand to ask calmly. "Today, the tasting competition is about to begin." "What are you going to do?" Her legs were folded together, and her eyes drifted away, waiting for his answer. Seeing that he didn't understand why, Zhang Shiwei simply said it clearly. She leaned forward and said, "I want to get the first place in the tasting competition. Only by winning the first prize will she be favored by Mr. Wu, and only in this way can she become famous in the international perfumery world. This is an opportunity that she cannot miss. The most important opportunity is that she must take advantage of it." "Take hold." Rosen's eyes shone with surprise, as if he was looking at some monster. After staring at her for a few seconds, he laughed out loud. "Why Wei, it's almost dawn, don't dream anymore. Where do you think this is? This is France. Do you think it's still your Sioux city? Use it casually wise. If I do some work for you, you can become number one. Here, you are nothing." He said it unceremoniously, without saving any face for her. Anticipating that he would say this, Zhang Shiwei was not angry. Instead, she smiled sarcastically at him. "Yes, this is France. I am nothing. What about you? Who do you think you are?" Rosen's expression suddenly changed and he sat up from the bed suddenly. "What do you mean? It's not interesting, I just accidentally learned something." She sneered twice. Rosen, I thought you were some great big shot, but I didn't expect you to be about the same as me. Yes, I am you used Suyun's stuff and took her name, but you are no better than me. Those so-called awards and works were not all accused of plagiarism. They were also borrowed. Other people's creativity, in the final analysis, we are still the same people. What nonsense are you talking about? Rosen's face turned green. He stood up, put on his pants, and said while tying his belt, I'm warning you, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't talk nonsense. If you annoy me, it's nothing to you. Good fruit. You know whether I'm talking nonsense or not. In fact, you can only fool us ignorant people in China. Your reputation abroad has long been over. I felt strange at the banquet yesterday that you were bragging. With all your fame and status, why doesn't anyone take the initiative to say hello to you, and the organizer doesn't treat you differently? It turns out, if she hadn't gone out to find someone to check yesterday, she wouldn't have known about this Rosen. It was just an illusion. I used to think that he was some great master in the field of perfumery, but it turned out that he was simply a copycat from abroad. He had been caught several times and had been reported. But because the fragrance circle is not that big, and he may have used some means to suppress it temporarily, the news did not spread to the country. Thinking about it, Zhang Shiwei felt it was not worth it. She actually destroyed everything she had worked hard for many years for such a person. If it hadn't been for him, she would not have gotten into an irreversible dispute with Luo Yuanhang. So, you're checking me? He took out a cigarette and lit it, his eyes dark and uncertain. I'm checking you, but don't worry, I won't do anything to you. After all, we are also grasshoppers in the same boat. Our interests are common, aren't we? She still smiled and looked at it. Couldn't be more gentle to go up to. What do you want? Rosen understood that she must have a motive for saying this, and she was definitely not just joking. It's easy to talk about other things. First place in the tasting competition. I don't have the ability. You do, why don't you? Standing up and walking towards him, half clinging on his body, Zhang Shiwei said softly, I heard that in last year's European Invitational Tournament, everyone was optimistic about another perfumer, but you won it. First, although he was questioned about cheating afterwards, no evidence was found. The hand holding the cigarette paused, and Rosen's face was sullen and he said nothing. So, I believe you definitely have this ability. I don't know what you can do, but you have said that this is France and this is your territory. You must have your own method, right? The wind blew in his ears. Actually, this matter is not easy to say simple, nor that difficult to say difficult. As for the competition, if you know the questions in advance, won't it be easy to deal with it? She is very aware of her own strength. If she relies on her strength to fight, it will be a fluke, not to mention winning the first place, but even being shortlisted will be a fluke. But if she knows the questions and answers in advance, everything will not be easy to grasp. It is said that it is difficult to cheat in the circle of perfumers. After all, there is no way to cheat in the sense of smell. But precisely because it is the sense of smell, how can others judge how sensitive your sense of smell is, and it is not all based on the final competition. Decide by the results. Since it is a competition, there are loopholes, and it is not impossible to cheat. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a person like Rosen, and he would still be able to thrive. Rosen didn't speak, he just kept smoking until he was almost finished with one cigarette, then he took the last sip and said, what good do I get? The good thing is, after the competition is over, I can send Suyun to you, and you can do whatever you want with her. She smiled confidently. Rosen also laughed, but it was just a sarcastic smile. Really? You couldn't do anything in China. Now that you're here, you've become more capable? What do you want me to believe? I can check you out, and of course I have my own way, she said calmly. It's hard to start in China because it's easy to get yourself burned and suspicions cast on me, but here, who would have thought it was me? Have you bought someone? As long as you think about it for a moment, you can probably understand. Zhang Shiwei was non-committal and just said, don't care what method I use, as long as I can achieve my goal. I want my reputation and status, and you can avenge me and relieve your hatred. Hiss, I'm not stupid. If you don't show up during the whole process, what will happen if she makes a big fuss and sues me? After a pause, he continued, even if she doesn't sue, her skills will kill me. He is not willing to risk his life for a moment of pleasure. What's more, no matter how notorious he is, he has no intention of leaving the circle. If such a scandal occurs, there is really no need to hang out. Glancing at him, Zhang Shiwei was very disdainful. Where is your intelligence at this time? She is disobedient, you can make her listen to you. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 170. Chapter 170. Is it a disguised recognition? You mean? Rosen hesitated. Zhang Shiwei smiled, but there was an indifferent chill deep in his eyes. Don't you have something that can make you happy? Just take it out and share it with her to make her happy too. If she is happy, she can't live without it? I can't live without you anymore. Rosen suddenly realized it and patted her shoulder while nodding. She really has the most poisonous heart among women. How about I get you some to try, and you can have fun with me? He lowered his head and asked her with a smile, and was about to kiss her lips. Zhang Shiwei quickly avoided it and said coquettishly, I'm telling you something serious, but you're joking with me. That thing is precious, so you should leave it to Suyun and let her enjoy it. Raised his eyebrows, Rosen did not continue to push her, but she did give him a new idea. Then what should we do? He sat down again, put away his playful expression, and asked seriously. Yao was woken up by the sound of the phone early in the morning. He frowned and touched the phone, then put it to his ear. Hello. A delicate female voice came from inside. Fourth brother, it's me. Have you gotten up? I brought you breakfast, please ask them to open the door and let me in. He looked at the time and saw that it was just under 7 in the morning. It was quite late when Su Feng sent her back last night. She really had endless energy. Wait a minute. He sat up and got out of bed to put on his slippers. Give the security guard your phone. Hey, Su Jianran responded with a clear voice, and happily turned the phone to the security guard. Well, if you don't open the door or not, I don't even know you. It's so troublesome. Originally, he wanted the security guard to open the door and let her in, but the moment he put on his slippers, he saw Su Yun's women's slippers beside the bed and suddenly came back to his senses. Now he is not living alone. There are many women's products at home. If Su Jianran sees it? Of course he didn't mind her knowing the fact that he was married, but he also promised Su Yun not to disclose their relationship for the time being, and if Su Jianran's personality was known, he would definitely find out the truth. So when the call turned to the security guard, he changed his tune again. Don't open the door, let her wait there, I'll be out right away. The phone was on speakerphone, so Su Jianran also heard what he said, and his expression immediately changed. Fourth brother, what did you say? I don't want. Before he finished speaking, the other end of the phone was hung up. Stamping her feet, she stood outside very depressed. This is how luxury houses are, especially places like Yojing Haoding. The people inside are either rich or wealthy, so security measures must be in place. If you don't have an access card, you are not the owner. It is not easy for anyone to come, and no one is allowed to enter. Su Jianran had no choice but to wait outside. She dressed beautifully today and even drove her little red horse here. She thought it was not appropriate to deliver supper last night, so it would be okay to have breakfast with him today, right? Unexpectedly, I couldn't even get through the door. Yao quickly washed up, changed his clothes and went out. When changing his shoes at the entrance, he saw Soo-yun's shoes again and couldn't help but sigh. He really missed his little wife more and more. Driving to the gate of the community, I saw Soo Jin-ran walking around in a lady's skirt. The door slowly opened and he drove out. Then he stuck his head out and said, "I have to go to the company." "Where's breakfast?" "Breakfast is here." He hurriedly brought it up. Just when his hands were about to touch, Soo Jin-ran suddenly felt something was wrong and took it back. "You go to the company, what should I do?" "You go home," he said bluntly. "You just came back not long ago. If you don't spend more time with your parents at home, why do you always come to my place?" "I'm happy," she pursed her lips. "Fourth brother, you can't do this to me. I got up so early in the morning and ran to buy breakfast and deliver it, and you didn't even let me in. At the very least, you should let me have breakfast with you before leaving." Yao glanced at her car parked on the side of the road. "I'm going to the company, how about you come with me?" He was sure that she could not accompany him while driving the car, but unexpectedly she was overjoyed when she heard this, went to the passenger seat, opened the door and got in. Okay. Yao, what should I do with your car?" "Never mind it, leave it there, I'll come back with you in the evening and I'll drive it away. It's wonderful to think about it. Oh hey, that's it?" She clapped her hands happily. "Do you believe that he will be dragged away before night?" Yao was a little helpless. "Just tow it away, and have someone drive it back when the time comes." "Fourth brother, what do you like to eat? I don't know if your taste has changed now, so I bought several kinds. You can see what you want to eat." Speaking, he handed the bag in front of him as if offering a treasure. Yao subconsciously grinned back, and then saw a small bottle of aromatherapy placed on the side of the passenger seat. It was a small thing that Soo-yun fiddled with and put it in the car for deodorizing. Thinking about her sitting in the seat and looking at Soo-yun, she felt a little uncomfortable. "You get off the car and sit in the back," he said. Soo Jin-ran's eyes widened and he was confused. "Why?" "The passenger seat is not safe," he made an excuse casually, "and you are sitting here with so much food, which affects my driving." Soo Jin-ran was speechless for a moment, then she thought of something again and smiled sweetly. "Does what you eat affect your driving, or do I affect your driving?" "Fourth brother, do you admit my influence on you?" Yao, don't think too much." He raised his hand and patted her on the head. The little girl was thinking about everything, and she could all relate to it. He. Although she was photographed, Soo Jin-ran was still very happy. She just thought that Yao was distracted because of herself. She was very satisfied with this answer. She reached for the door happily, but when she was about to touch it, she thought of something. She turned around and said, "You can't drive away when I get out of the car. You can't lie to me." Yao sighed. "No, sit in the back." "Okay." Soo Jin-ran got out of the car willingly, opened the door of the back seat and sat in. Looking in the rearview mirror, Yao saw that her face was bursting with smiles, and he didn't know what she was happy about. Shaked his head, started the car and drove towards the company. Because he arrived too early, there was almost no one in the company. He went straight from the president to the elevator upstairs. He just wanted to finish breakfast and send the little girl away, and he had to find a way to keep her busy so that she could not pester him like this anymore. Soo Jin-ran didn't know what he was thinking. He just felt that being able to follow him to the company for breakfast was considered a disguised recognition of status. If she wasn't your girlfriend, why would you take her to the company office? This is equivalent to making it public. End of this chapter.